Hello, this is Finding the Automation Potential of Your Website, the presentation that I gave at Donorfest on the 4th of March 2026. I am Andy Best. I am the co-founder of Charity Toolkit. I'm a Donorfy integrations partner. I have been for 10 years now, and to that partnership I bring my background in it as a designer, developer, and illustrator. But enough of all that. We're going to get stuck in. We're going to get stuck in to the big question, the biggest question, actually, the question that has likely confounded all of humanity for the entirety of human existence. Why did the chicken cross the road? That's what I wanted to know. Why did the chicken cross the road? The reason, as it turns out, is because it always has. It always has. It's always done it that way. The chicken before him has always done it that way. The chicken before him has always done it that way. The handover notes, chicken by chicken, stipulate that the first thing you do when you get to the farm that day for work is to cross the road, take care of some chickeny business, and then come back again, and only then get into your actual remit here at the farm. And you see, in the chicken, the reason this goes on and on is because the chicken never stops to ask, is this really the best way to do this? Is there a better way that I could be using my time here, freeing up this resource? Is there another way, essentially? Here are a whole bunch of charities that I've worked with to date. It's not all the charities I've worked with, but it's a lot of them. And each and every one of them, the fundraising managers I've spoken to there, the comms managers and the CEOs in some cases, they've all reached that point, that chicken moment where they do ask, is this process that we're doing here routinely really the best use of our time? Could we free up some resource on this process if we perhaps outsourced it or built it differently or automated it? And that's really the crux of the presentation. It's that I want the people looking at this to ask the same questions. And to start with this question, where's the automation potential of my website? So here, this is your website, right? I mean, it's not. Hopefully, this isn't your website. Just a concatenation of all of the most interactive components on one homepage like this, as efficient as that might be. That's obviously not a ideal website setup. But across your website, I would expect that you would have these components. I'd expect that you'd have a donations component to facilitate transactions from fundraising and so on. Potentially, you've got a third-party feed on your website. Data coming in from another source. Perhaps you have children in need of sponsorship, or animals in need of adoption, or maybe even your events information is coming in from an aggregate third-party service. Perhaps the event registration itself, therefore, is also through a third-party form or integration or an outbound service altogether. Perhaps you've got a shop on your website where you're taking in customer data and order data. I would expect that you've got some sort of component for people to reach out to you in the first place, a get in touch form. And you may take that further with segmentation, perhaps with a newsletter sign up or another form where you're explicitly asking people the capacity at which they want to engage with you, or they want you to engage with them going forward. What we're going to do on this presentation is have a look at a couple of these key areas of your website and identify how they might be ripe for automation potential. So donation and fundraising, that's where we'll start. That's the obvious place to start. That should appeal to all the charities looking at this. So on your website, you'll have a donation control. It's not yours. You didn't build it. You didn't code it. You're borrowing that of a third party by way of an embed or a widget implementation of some kind. This is a third party product on your website, which is why it's orange here. It doesn't quite blend in, it doesn't quite fit in with the rest of the experience, but it does the job. It is taking donations, which will end up benefiting your cause. Or worse, you don't have that. What you've actually got is a donate button, and to click that is going to take a user away from your website and over to the website of the third party. And then the same process happens there to facilitate the donation. But yeah, it's not your experience anymore. It's even more removed from your original experience. It might have your logo, it might carry some of your brand colors or whatever, but it's very much not your product. But in either case, the problem with both of those solutions is the donor data, the donation data, it ends up in that third party database. That's what that symbol there is. It's not with you. It's out of reach. It's not impossible to reach, but it is out of reach. And to get hold of it, so that you can retrieve it, there's a bit of a process. So let's do that. Let's do that process now. The first thing we're going to have to do is log into our account over at that third party. Okay, standard fare, username, password, easy. Okay, yes, that's generated the two-factor authentication code. I forgot about that. That's gone to Janet's phone. Janet's off sick today. Okay, hold on. One sec. We're just hi, Janet. Hello. Yeah, it's Andy. How are you feeling? Oh gosh, food poisoning. Oh, I'm sorry. So I'm sorry to disturb you. Yeah, so what it is I've just tried to I'm just logged into Super Supreme Donation Max Plus Plus, that platform that we use for our donations. Yeah, well, when I've logged in, what's happened is it's sent a code, like an SMS code to your phone. That's right. Yeah. Yeah, if you could read that to me, I'll type it in here and then I can carry on. Yeah, it's 579. Got it. Perfect. Thank you, Janet. Thank you. Sorry to disturb you. Feel better, okay? Okay, bye. Bye. Brilliant. No, okay. All right. No, we can do this easy. Bicycles. So this one, I mean, it's got a wheel off. Does that count? I guess yeah, fine. That one, and yes. Okay, that worked. We're in. I can get hold now of my donation data from the system. It's a CSV file. We'll download that. We'll get that ready, and then I can use Donorfy's file uploader to put that data in. I mean, I'm gonna have to. Yeah, I'll just spend a bit of time changing the column headings, haven't I? And there's the wonky postcode formatting. I'm gonna have to just spend some time. Yeah, I'll spend an hour on this, just a quick hour on this, straightening that out, getting that ready for Donorfy, and then when it is ready, we'll perfect. We'll just log in to Donorfy, username, password, standard fare. Yeah. Hi again, Janet. Hi, yeah, it's me. Yeah, sorry, you sound busy. Um, Listen, so what? Yeah, so what's happened this time? Now I'm trying to log into Donorfy, right? And that's yeah, that's right. It's done the same thing. Yeah. Okay, so if you could do 7, got it. Yep. Perfect. Yeah, that's it. That'll do it. Thank you so much, Janet. See you tomorrow, Friday. Okay. See you next week. Okay. Bye. Uh, okay. All right. Code. We got that. That's in. Oh my. Okay. Okay. Yep. Ducks. One. Yeah, that's quite easy actually. Okay. We're there. We're done. That's it. The CSV. We're in. I can upload that. We're uploading that. That's gone into Donorfy. There's got to be an easier way, hasn't there? Hasn't there? Well, there are, in fact, well, there's two. There are two easier ways. It's sort of a cheat. This one, it's strictly speaking not additional automation to solve this problem. This problem can be solved organically with Donorfy's native tools. It's got the web widgets and it's got the forms, both of which are deployable bits of tech that can integrate directly with your websites. They come with code to embed them, and they will take donations immediately and map them straight into Donorfy, or create the donor records or identify them if they already exist. They will handle gift aid eligibility. They will handle communications preferences. In the case of forms, they'll take activities as well. Yeah, these are ready to go. You don't require a third-party service to take donation into your Donorfy CRM. Now, I know that a lot of charities are hesitant to use these products out of the box because, as you can see, how they appear and some of the functionality within them out of the box is it could do with a little bit of love, care, and attention. And over those 10 years that I've been a Donorfy partner, that's precisely what we've been doing. I've been working with charities to dress up their forms, be they widgets or the Donorfy forms, to introduce a lot more styling, a lot more presentation to those, bringing them on brand, improving the look and feel generally, but also improving the user experience at a functional level. So better stewardship, more governance over some of the controls and the fields, and in some cases as well, data enrichment. We're asking a few more questions and capturing a few more pieces of data, and having those mapped to Donorfy in ways that out of the box it won't do. Try not to use third-party software if you absolutely can get away without doing so, in favor of these two bits of tech. But I do appreciate there will be platforms and instances that do fill a need, and they will be third-party, and your data will sit away from you and your website. That's not to say then that the solution can't be found. On the screen here, there are a couple of platforms that I just want to quickly discuss. Much loved, the in-memory fundraising platform. And Raisley, the kind of open-ended fundraising platform, donation platform, appeals and campaigns and so on. That's just two products out of the many out there that I know for sure integrate with Donorfy, because at Charity Toolkit we have built dedicated integrations between those platforms and Donorfy. So any donor data and donation data captured by those two platforms can automatically be surfaced over in Donorfy without you needing to do any more export and import activity. And then there's a third product in the center of the screen there, Raise It Forms. That's one of our own products. Charity Toolkit have developed that ourselves. It's a peer-to-peer giving solution that you can embed into your website. And the donations and the fundraisers and the donor information gathered by this integration will map directly to Donorfy as well. Okay, let's move on to e-commerce. You might have a shop on your website. I'll tell you who has a shop on their website, Bliveswood. They have a shop on their website. I'm just going to leave this on the screen for a couple of seconds, help your suntan come along whilst you're looking at it. The shop on the Bliveswood website is powered by a piece of tech called WooCommerce, and the way that Bliveswood are using it are for the sale, let's say, of two classifications of items. They have the direct-to-customer items, so things like seasonal Christmas cards and things like that will turn up to a customer's doorstep. Additionally, they are selling items by way of donation. So for example, here you'll see mosquito nets, literature for schools. These things won't turn up to the customer's doorstep if they're purchased. The purchase is actually a donation, and so the money from that purchase goes on to fund the acquisition and the distribution of these items to the benefactors of the charity. So that's all working well, and of course all the data that captures through that Woo technology sits in the Woo database. Blythe would obviously have an interest in that data actually sitting over in Donorfy so that they can adequately market to these people, these customers, incentivize them to buy again, update them on the status of the purchases they've made, so far as how they've benefited those benefactors and so on further down the line. And while they can do that, and get that data over there, the method to do that currently is with a CSV, manual export, fiddling around with it, manual import into Donorfy. But wait, what if that wasn't the way to do that? What if, with a bit of customization and tinkering, a bit of technical know-how, first port of call, we have a look at that Woo product and we adjust what it does. We change slightly the way it works so that we get it to not only capture the usual customer and order information, we train it to understand how to capture things like comms preferences, gift aid eligibility, tags, assigning tags to the customer. WooCommerce won't know what to do with any of that stuff. None of that stuff means anything to it. But we need to capture that data at this point so that when we automate it over to Donorfy, it makes sense to Donorfy. Donorfy does need this information, and so we do map comms, gift aid. We can tag. We can tag based on the contents of those checked out orders, those basket orders, to understand what items were purchased, and therefore the tagging segmentation of that might be useful for retargeting and focusing those comms down the line. You'll notice at the bottom there as well that we add not one but 2 transactions per every actual checkout from Woo. We can do that because we can itemize the basket and split out those direct to customer orders as transactions, and then those items in that basket that are bound for purchases and donations and so on over to the benefactors as a donation, where gift aid would apply to one and not the other, reporting would apply to one and not the other, and so on and so on. We can do all that because of this bank of blue animated chevrons you see going on here. Anytime you see that happening throughout this presentation, you're looking at one of or a combination of 4 things going on. There's going to be some API activity in there. So an API essentially is a behind-the-scenes transmission of data that's coming out of a system, and then we use the API also to put the data back into yet another system. The webhooks, if there are any webhooks in play, they are sort of like automatic events that fire out data into the world, ready to be captured by any script that's trained on in the event of an event taking place. So in this case, the event would be that a sale has just been made. Here's that packet of data about that sale and that customer, ready for some custom code, which is the third block there. So custom code, that's where the real magic happens, the whole juice of the thing. We develop some custom code to handle what either the API or the webhook is telling us, to do the reformatting, and to forward on to Donorfy to execute other instructions as well. We might be sending emails, we might be pushing this over to yet other systems that aren't Donorfy, and so on. The custom code layer of that is where the real needs are addressed on a data level per charity. And then triggers at the end. You might be familiar with Donorfy triggers. So once data's entered Donorfy, we'll now have IDs that we didn't have before. We'll have some constituent IDs, RPI IDs, transaction IDs, data that Donorfy spins up that we can then use perhaps to reset some of these processes, fire yet more APIs, fire yet more webhooks. And then we know a little bit more context because we can trace things back to these original IDs. Okay, then let's move on to registration and data capture. This is your website once again, and on your website you potentially have a form, and it might serve the purpose for volunteer registration or a general contact form. It might be a form for users to sign up to use your service that you offer as a charity in the first place, or it could be a humble newsletter subscription form. Whatever it is, chances are it's not yours. You didn't code it. It's orange in this display here because once again it's third party. It's embedded on your site. And we all know that the data going through that ends up over in the database of that third party. It's out of reach, but again, not impossible to reach, just out of reach. It can be retrieved, but it'll upset Janet. Bendrig Trust are a charity that I've recently conducted some work for. What we've done here is we've had a look at their volunteer application process. This begins on the left. On their website, they have an apply to volunteer button, which when clicked, redirects the user away from the site and over to a website, a platform called Jotform. And from there, a volunteer can fill out a form to register their interest to be a volunteer. But that data stays there. It sits over in Jotform, and the charity have to log into that, manually export it, manually import it over to Donorfy before they get their eyes on it to do anything useful with it. Obviously, they've identified that as being a point of automation potential, and that's exactly what we've done. We've now developed the integration for them that's constantly alert, constantly ready to receive data. It's observing that form and any data coming out of that form and creating or identifying an existing record in Donorfy for this user. It's pushing over some comms preferences. It's pushing over some tags. We're setting tags based on some of the answers that are given on the form. So there's some conditional stuff going on there, because if they don't answer those questions, we won't bother. Depending on how they answer those questions will depend on which tags we're going to set across a couple of different categories. So there's, in that custom code layer and those chevrons there, there's some dynamic intelligence observing what's in the answers of those questions. And the final thing we're doing is we're bundling a activity, that's the Donorfy activity symbol at the bottom there, onto the timeline. It's a Jotform activity. I mean, I think we have given it a proper name, a volunteer registration form or application form, some wording to that effect. But ultimately, it's an activity generated by this Jotform execution. And within that, we make use of a number of the prescribed fields that come with a Donorfy activity. We're highlighting some of the salient answers in that form so that they can be surfaced in lists and reporting. Yeah, I think it's a very, very bespoke handling of this data between these two platforms, but it fills a need. It frees up that resource every week or every day that the team over there are having to log into Jotform and pull this stuff out. So that was one very quick forms example. There's no shortage of forms product out in the wild that have automation potential. In fact, the ones on the screen here, I have either built integrations for in the past, or I've at least scoped them for their capabilities for transmitting data to Donorfy. So I know that they have the potential for automation. Gravity Forms is highlighted in the center there. I've got a little bit more to say about that one. So I'll tell you the story of the Sobel Raffle 2026, which is a very current campaign that's underway. So already, Sobel House Hospice, client of mine, are using the Gravity Forms to Donorfy integration. What that means is any form that they build on their website using the Gravity Forms product, they can electively enroll into the integration to push its submitted data over to Donorfy. And as we just saw in the Bendrig example, what that's going to do is create or identify an existing Donorfy record. It's going to push over any comms if we've asked for any. It's going to push over any tags if they've been mapped. If applicable, if there was a transaction in that form, in that Gravity form, we might have been asking for gift aid for it at the time, in which case we'll handle the declaration and the eligibility for that. The Gravity Forms submission, well, that comes through as an activity on the timeline, but equally the integration gives the charity the power to elect which activity gets instructed onto the timeline here. So contextually, form by form, that's useful, because the number of forms that Sobel House are using is quite vast. The Gravity Form system is handling for them event registrations, gift aid opt-ins, comms preference updates, general contact, story sharing, all sorts of form-based activity going through Gravity Forms means that they've got the flexibility to map the fields that they need to, set the activities they need to, and again, if there is a transaction, a payment made in the form, push that through and map that as well. So the transaction might be a donation, it might be a payment towards registration for a marathon or so and so on. It's an extraordinarily flexible integration. But the team came to me separately and asked about, well, they've identified this as being an automation, potential automation area of their website. Their raffle. Again, in this display, it's orange, it's not theirs. They don't run a raffle, they don't have one coded. It's third party, it's an outsourced raffle product. The problems with it are, as we've seen, the data submitted through that product ends up in a third party database, so it's out of reach, not impossible to reach, but out of reach. Sorry, Janet. It's also something they're paying for. They'd rather not do that anymore. So they engaged me to come up with an idea, and already there were a lot of signs about the brief that suggested we could probably leverage the Gravity Forms integration that they were already enjoying. What we ended up doing was building a bespoke layer, and a sort of bolt-on, if you like, to the logic in that integration to develop the context of the sale of raffle tickets. So the form didn't have that before. Gravity Forms integration didn't have the consciousness of this concept, so that needed building out, which means that now when submissions for these forms go through, a custom code layer is engaged, and this does four things for them. The first thing it's doing is checking for caps. We don't want ticket purchases, raffle ticket purchases, to exceed the caps for any individual or the game in total. There are two, to be compliant with fundraising standards, gambling standards, and so on, there are caps. So this code is checking that every player has not exceeded their allowance in the game, and that the game total sales are being adhered to as well. It's also got to generate the raffle tickets themselves because, as I say, Gravity Forms, their website, Donorfy, none of it knows what a raffle ticket is or how to create one. So this custom code logic is doing that as well. It's creating unique IDs. It's stashing the tickets that are raised into a database. It's ensuring that, again, they're unique, that the sales were successful, and so on and so on. And then off the back of that, the player, the new player, needs to be emailed their raffle ticket numbers, because without those, well, one, they're not certain that they're in the draw. This is obviously their qualifications that they've entered the draw, and that they need to reconcile their ticket number with those drawn when the draw eventually takes place. And then the fourth thing this custom code is doing, it's still doing what the Gravity Forms element was doing before, in that it pushes over to Donorfy at the other end, but we've now got a few extra bits of detail to send over to Donorfy. We don't stash everything about this exchange over there, but I believe we're stashing that they are now raffle players, how many tickets they've bought, and so on, because that's going to come out of the wash in reporting down the line. But they didn't stop there, Sobel House. They asked for a little bit more. They wanted offline players to be able to be eligible for the raffle or take part in the raffle as well. But of course, if you're an offline player, if you're playing by phoning up the organization or by encountering the staff at an event or so on, you aren't interfacing with Gravity Forms. So what we had to do was build a sort of manual entry layer to this in the back end, in the admin side of the website, so that the website team, the raffle team, can log in and manually input any of the data that they took down during those transactions that occurred offline for the raffle. That puts them via the same custom code layer into the draw using those same four criteria. So it's checking the caps for this person, generating their tickets, emailing them to let them know what their ticket numbers from that generation are, and we send that on to Donorfy as well. And I believe when we send on to Donorfy here, we do make the distinction that this was an offline entry as opposed to others which were online entries, and that was going to ultimately feed into their reporting and let them know where best to invest their attention on the raffle going forward. But this also gave us the opportunity, this admin area, to build out an export feature. I know that CSVs are something that I've sort of poo-pooed in this presentation to this point, but to get this project off the ground as quickly as we needed to do so, the simplest thing to do here was to generate a download CSV feature so that the charity has all of the ticket numbers to hand, and they can feed them into whichever draw process they're planning to use when the time comes to run the draw. Let's look at MailChimp very quickly. Why on earth are we doing that when Donorfy and MailChimp already have an integration between one another? They integrate natively. Well, this is why. Because my customer Rain Rescue, this is another suntan opportunity, by the way. Rain Rescue, they are enjoying the Donorfy and MailChimp integration, but they wanted it to do more, and because it's a native integration, we can't get near it. It's in the bowels of Donorfy. It's doing what it does. It's not available for retooling. So instead, what we did was build on top of it, build around it, and just bolster ultimately what the MailChimp and Donorfy and their website connectivity does. So we start looking at their standard subscription form. Now, this is neither a MailChimp form nor a Donorfy form. It is just a, I don't think it does anything actually. It's just a dummy intake form taking in first name, last name, email. By way of some custom integration, submissions through that form now generate very low level, very light touch constituents over in Donorfy. So again, it's those same three fields: their name, their email address, and the fact that they're opting into email comms, obviously. And then we have a relay happening here. So there is a second burst of custom integration on here, which then forwards on this individual to MailChimp and creates them over there instantaneously. That means we've been able to enroll them into an automated flow. So that yellow block at the end with the 3 emails there, that's indicative of a prescribed MailChimp automation flow having been set up by the charity. And by using this process, as opposed to the native Donorfy MailChimp process integration, we're able to put this person into the audience and into the flow in one step instantaneously. I believe with the Donorfy integration, there are some delays, perhaps even a cycle, and I believe it's a manual push as well for an export to get this to work. So by building this bespoke, we've been able to expedite how quickly that process happens. Not only that, but there's yet a third layer to this integration, pushing back into Donorfy. So anytime one of these emails leaves MailChimp, we send over a sort of receipt activity over to the timeline of this person to identify how far through this flow they're getting at each stage they're sent one of these emails. And then we took that blueprint and ultimately rolled it out a couple of more different ways. So the shop that's on the Rain Rescue website, every time someone checks out a basket there, we do the same thing. We push them over to Donorfy and create a record or identify a record over there. And now they're as a customer. Obviously, we opt them into email as well if they agreed to. We generate an activity on their timeline. Again, this shop is powered by WooCommerce. It needn't be, but in this case it is. So they're getting a WooCommerce activity on the timeline there. That's a good thing because we can stash into that activity some of the key items that might have been in that basket. The reason why that's important is if we detect those key items in that second bank of chevrons over there, we can direct the user into a different MailChimp flow. So depending on the items in the basket, we might want to send them down a different route or a different slightly amended automated flow, which is contextually relevant to the item in that basket. And obviously the transaction from that shop sits on the timeline as well. And as before, any email coming out of that MailChimp flow, we're stashing a receipt over into their timeline, just so that from a Donorfy perspective, we can keep track of how far through that flow these users are getting. And then the final implementation of this template, this blueprint, hangs on the sponsorship element of the Rain Rescue website. They have an opportunity to sponsor a dog or sponsor a cat, generating an RPI in Donorfy. When that happens, we are, as I say, putting them into Donorfy, again, by creation or lookup. Comms, once again, signing them in for comms. The transaction from that sponsorship, it's an RPI, we'll set that up. And that second bank of chevrons understands which of those two sponsorship variants this customer has just entered into, the dogs versus the cats flow, and assigns them onto the relevant MailChimp flow thereafter. The receipt activity coming across back to Donorfy after each one of those emails goes out. Okay, so that's enough of the examples. How do I automate? At last, how do we get there? How did we get some of these processes in place? The first thing you have to do is identify what you can automate, where the opportunity is. And it really boils down to two things. Have a look around your website. Try and identify anything that's third party, anything that you don't have sole control over, that you couldn't log in and look at on your website exclusively. Any data that you know is flowing elsewhere. Or any services that you're using that have webhooks or API features. Those two parts there, to figure that out, the simplest thing to do is if you head to the website of the developers and the manufacturers or whatever of the service in question, and usually scroll all the way down to their footer section, you should find down there a tab for developers, a navigation item for developers, and that'll usually take you out to some pretty heady technical documentation. But that documentation, if you did a search, there should be a search feature. Any credible developers area will have one. Run a quick search for either webhooks or the API and see what comes back. If you get an answer, yeah, you're in good stead. And the other place is to consider what you do that's manual processing. If there's a manual process, a routine manual process that you're doing with data from your website or into your website or from another source, any exports and imports that you're having to do frequently, or if there's any data reformatting you're having to do to any data that crosses your path, then you've got yourself a process that potentially could be automated. So yeah, anything that you see that's qualifies for any of these areas on the screen here, there's your automation potential. Okay, that was the talk for this year. If you do have any questions, you can reach out to me. Any of the information down in the description below, we've got links there, we've got more information. In fact, any of the other videos on this YouTube channel might answer some of your questions as well, particularly around where the donation and fundraising forms element comes into effect, and particularly around any of the third-party fundraising and donation integrations. Thanks for watching.